It's my Bobby's Burger coffee mug.
Oh, right, Bobby's Burger. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you're coming from Bobby's interview, we're going to continue the conversation. If you're not coming from Bobby's video, or you're watching this in a later date, thank you. But the first part of this interview is actually on Bobby Dizzle's YouTube channel, and you can watch that. So this is a continuation of that. But for everybody who doesn't know, Bobby does have his own channel, as I said. He's into the paranormal, fitness, the outdoors. What was the other thing I missed? There's like one more thing in there.
I do a lot of paranormal, a lot of comedy.
Great and outdoors. Comedy. I always forget the comedy one.
It's basically whatever I feel like doing that day. I'm right. ADHD, and it fulfills my gnat-like reflexes.
Great. And then and our special guest is Robert Bitto. So I've known Robert for a few years at least, and Robert is a very accomplished and prolific author, businessman, YouTube channel person who has a YouTube channel. But what Robert does a lot is he travels to Mexico for business, all over Mexico very often, and he started collecting legends and stories that he realized that they're staying very local, sometimes even to that little town or little state. And he saw the opportunity there to tell these stories. And that's what he's been doing with Mexico Unexplained, his website. And if, like I always say, if you want to support Robert, just go to Amazon, type in Robert Bitto, and you can see his books and his coloring books. And yeah, that's Robert. So, well, I asked Robert before I started if he could think of some cool places, geographical locations in Mexico we could talk about. And he gave me 3 places, and I got a bonus one we'll talk about also. But so, yeah, I'm going to pull up the first location. We can all see it. What I did is I used a video game called Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 edition, and I flew over these areas. So this video game uses satellite data, and it reconstructs the area in 3D. So let me go ahead and pull that up.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool because you could literally go anywhere in the world. Antarctica, the rainforest, and you could find a representation. Okay, let's see. Go to here. Here we go. Just getting the technical things done out of the way. Let's see. Okay, I have to add this. Right. Let's do this version.
Have you seen the Honda commercial where they show this actual thing in the air?
Oh, this little vehicle I have?
Yeah, like I want to buy one, even though they're probably like $1 million.
It seems super easy to fly, so yeah, I'm interested in one too. Okay, let me just make it full screen. Okay, so this area, let's see if I remember. I think these are the volcanoes, I believe, we're about to start flying over.
Is that mountain you're talking about? Is it the one that resembles Kilimanjaro when you look at a Mexico City picture?
It kind of does, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you look at the Serengeti pictures.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm always fascinated by the mountains in the distance. That can be considered an interest of mine too. Just mountains in the distance, just general broad terrain.
Yeah, so it looks like Robert, these are the mountains. Yeah, these are the mountains outside Mexico City, Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl. Try saying that 10 times fast.
I know. I was going to ask you, can you please say the name of these places? Because, yeah, I cannot do that. But there you go.
And one of them means the smoking mountain, Popocatépetl, and then the other one, Iztaccíhuatl, means the white lady.
You said the white lady a while ago.
The white lady, because it's always snow covered. I'm sorry, what?
I thought you meant a haunting when you said a white lady a while ago.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, it looks like we're headed there, yeah.
About to crash.
So this, in the foreground, this looks like Popo, as they say, Popocatépetl. And then, because there's little snow on it, because it is an active volcano, so it does get hot. And then the one after that, that's Iztaccíhuatl.
Okay. Nice.
And that's the one, that volcano has been dead for a long time. So there's no, the snow cap there is permanent.
When's the last big eruption from the one you were talking about earlier? The
Well,
one
it
that rumbles a
depends
lot.
on what you want to call big. It rumbles and all the time, and yeah. So, and it's an ash volcano, so it just spews ash into the air.
No top
It's,
blowing or anything.
no,
That's fascinating. Volcanoes, just
Interesting. And
anything could happen.
what state is this in? What part of Mexico are we in? You said, oh, we're near Mexico
it's
City.
outside of
What state is
Mexico
that?
City. So there's one side of it, I believe it's Puebla and Tlaxcala, and then the other side is the Valley of Mexico, so the federal district. And then the part of it is in the state of Mexico too, I think.
Interesting. Cool. And then we're gonna get over so we're at the top right now. I also read, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the third highest mountain peak in Mexico that we're at right now.
Yes.
And I believe we were getting close to. I believe you could. It's kind of small, but when I was playing the game, I think the elevation is like 18 or 19, close to 20,000 feet in elevation.
Yeah, it's pretty up
to get
there.
to this
That's for
mountain top.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, and then I noticed that we're gonna see it. We're going toward the top of this range, but there is one other mountain in the distance. What is that one? Just one solitary mountain peak we're gonna see.
It's probably Toluca. If it has the top cut off of it, then it's Toluca. Nevado de Toluca. It also has permanent snow cap, and there's a legend as to why that is missing its top. It did blow its top in ancient times. I think it like 10,600 years ago, just that recently. But there's a legend saying that the white lady, Iztaccíhuatl, was a woman and Popocatépetl was a man. They were giants. And Nevado de Toluca was also a giant. And he wanted Iztaccíhuatl to be his. And Popo would not let her be, that was his lady. And so he hurled a bunch of ice chunks to the other mountain, who was a giant, and knocked his head off. And that's why the Toluca mountain doesn't have a head. It's cut off at the top. And people believe that it blew its top off while there were people to witness it. That's how recent it happened. So that's one of the legends associated with the mountains.
Very cool. Yeah, that's new to me. And a more recent event, is this correct? Is this where UFO came out of on live TV during?
It came out of Popo, the bigger one. We're over Iztaccíhuatl right now. This is where the permanent snowfield is, where the Bigfoot creatures have been sighted. So this is the territory of the Cuatlacas. Right. So where we're headed now, the peak that you see in the background, that's where the UFO came out of on live TV, where millions of people saw it over their breakfast.
Oh. Okay.
I kind of want to watch that.
Yeah, you can find it everywhere.
Like, how is that not just played 24/7?
Well, I'm sorry?
Literal UFO. How is that not played 24/7? Like an actual UFO. How are we not still talking about it? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, one thing about Mexico City, because there's any estimates 28 million to 30 million people in that valley, and most of them have cell phones. So you have millions of people who can capture a single UFO incident.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Very interesting. So people who hike on this mountain range, this is where they see a certain type of Bigfoot creature. Now, is this the aggressive kind?
It's the big buff, the big, like, muscular Cuatlacas. And he's found on the peaks or on the slopes of this peak, and then also into the state of Puebla, the northern part of that state, where there's thick pine forests. So, yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
And there is footage.
This is definitely...
You can go on the internet and you can see footage. Someone who was hiking in the snow. It was a snowstorm on Iztaccíhuatl, and they filmed this creature moving at a rapid pace, going up what was like an ice cliff. So,
Oh wow.
yeah. And some people think that his feet have like crampons on them, like the spikes that help people climb on ice surfaces. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Well, cool. All right. Well, cool. Yeah, that's a great area to look at. Okay, so that mountain we're going toward, which one is that? Is that the active, the volcano that
Yes,
had
that's the
the
active
right?
one. That's
Okay.
Popocatépetl. And if you don't want to say Popocatépetl, you can say Popo. They say that there too.
Is that something you can hike to the caldera?
You can hike up there, but now it's because it's somewhat active. They're restricting access to it to the top. But after certain periods of calmness, then you can hike all the way up there. But sometimes you will see, I mean, for the most part, like when I was down there, when I was working in Mexico City in 1995, that had snow on it. And then when I was leaving, it was starting to erupt again, and plumes of smoke were coming out of it. And, you know, people go about their business. Well, so, okay, he's smoking again. It's the name of the mountain, Smoking Mountain. And there's a love story with these two mountains. There's an Aztec version and there's a Tlaxcalan version. And she is always a princess in each version, and he is always a warrior. And she gets tricked into believing that he died in battle, and then she kills herself. And then he comes back and sees her dead and then picks her up in his arms. And that's a famous image that you see among Mexican Americans, you know, everything from cholo lowrider culture to t-shirts and, you know, murals on community centers and stuff. It's a very recognizable picture of the Aztec guy with a big headdress carrying this limp, lifeless body. And then what happened is they became the mountains. She's the white lady, and then he's the smoking mountain. And he always carried a literal, you know, we always say in our culture, carrying a torch for someone. Well, he always had a lit torch to symbolize his love for the princess. And so that's why he smokes. That's the torch of his love for Iztaccíhuatl. Yeah. It's a nice little love story, huh?
It is. That's crazy. This is such a culturally rich little area of Mexico. It's got so much different things going on at the same time. Yeah. Cool. Well, very cool. Okay. Well, if you have anything else to say, if not, you say now, or I can move on to the next location if you'd like.
Well, if anyone wants to look more into this legend, they can go to my YouTube channel or my website, MexicoUnexplained.com, and it's episode number 225. So they can look that up.
I have a related question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a related question. Not necessarily legend related, but what volcano was it in Mexico that just appeared? Wasn't there one that grew over a certain amount of days?
Yeah, that was in Michoacan, and that was Paricutin. And that the big legend there was that it engulfed a town, and it engulfed the church, but the lava stopped at the altar. You know,
so that was the miracle. I thought it was something actually happened.
No, it did happen. But yeah, it did happen. That actually happened, I believe, in the 30s or 40s. It was Paricutin, and it erupted, and it was a lava volcano. And the lava stopped at the altar, and you know, people said it was a miracle, and the rest of the town was completely destroyed.
You know, like it wasn't there one day, and then a mountain grew, and then
out of a farmer's field.
Yeah. I remember my fourth grade teacher telling me that, and I was like, wait, what? Hold up. A mountain grew, and she never elaborated. I've researched a time or two, but I've never heard much about it.
And all of these volcanoes, the soils in central Mexico are very rich because of this. I swear Mexico could be the most powerful, the richest country on earth. The central part of that country has the perfect climate. The climate's like San Diego. It's 70 degrees all year round. And the growing season is long, and the soils are amazing. And the vegetables and fruits that come out of there, it's the land of plenty. You know, if they got their act together, they could be a formidable presence in the world.
Maybe that's the answer for the Ukrainian food shortage.
Well,
just grow it all in Mexico.
Well, yeah, if there are, I mean, that's interesting because we were talking recently about how there's, the news is reporting that there's fertilizer shortages because of the war in the Ukraine, because Russia produces the world's majority of fertilizer. But it's interesting Robert talks about these areas that have natural fertilizer already because of volcanic activity, you know.
Yeah, the soils are very rich.
Let me play the second video. This is the bonus one. Let me see if I could get it to work correctly. I got to do a couple things real fast. But yeah, I took a video now of Mexico City. So it's pretty close by, and it's one of the largest cities in the world. So I just thought it'd be interesting for Robert to just talk about that. So let me pull it up real fast. Okay.
It's hard to believe I lived there 27 years ago. Gosh, that was a long time ago. You guys were in elementary school, I know.
27 years ago?
Yeah.
I was in 5th or 6th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. So right now we're going to fly toward the middle of Mexico City. So yeah, Robert, I don't know if you have. I'm sure there's something interesting about Mexico City.
Well, where do you want to start? It looks like we're over Chapultepec Park. I could be wrong, but I think that's what this is. If we could go lower, then maybe I can see. I think that
unfortunately it's pre-recorded, but yeah, this is right toward the center of the city. Is that where the park is?
Yeah, it's right in the center of the city, Chapultepec Park. There's a castle there that was the castle of the Mexican emperor, Maximilian, and it served as a military academy at the time that the Americans took over Mexico in the 1840s during the Mexican War. And there's a legend there that 7 cadets, instead of surrendering to the Americans, that was the last holdout in the war for Mexico City. The 7 young cadets climbed to the top of the roof and jumped off. And some of them they wrapped themselves in the Mexican flag, and instead of surrendering to the Americans, they jumped off the roof.
Oh, wow.
And
cool.
inside of that castle, because it was the last place that the Americans took over when they invaded Mexico, that was the place where they raised the American flag, and that ended the battle, basically. In the site of that flag raising was the biggest public hanging in American history. If we're going to consider it a part of America because it was occupied territory of the United States, the biggest public hanging that ever happened in U.S. history happened there. And that was the San Patricio Regiment, Irish Catholics who were from the United States who went to fight on the Mexican side. They were deserters from the United States military who formed a battalion, the St. Patrick's Battalion, San Patricio, and they fought on the Mexican side. The Americans captured them and did the biggest mass hanging in U.S. history. Before they hanged all these people, they said, look at the flagpole of that castle. The Mexican flag went down, the American flag went up, and then that was when the hanging happened. So that was a pretty profound moment in American history that a lot of people don't even know about.
Probably my ancestors. You
never know.
They were probably just really drunk. I thought they were on the wrong side. No, an Irish Catholic.
The ones who did not get captured by the Americans were honored by Mexico and given pensions and land and ranches and things like that. Not very many of them did survive. I think there was like a dozen of them that were rewarded by the Mexican government after that.
Gotcha. Now,
so it looks like we're going down the same thing again. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it just replays. Yeah, so I was going to ask you. Unfortunately, I think I'm taxing my computer too much, so I'm getting lag on my end. I'm not sure if it's showing up on the stream. So because of that, I was going to ask you: can you repeat the very beginning of the castle story? Like, where was the castle located? Just the beginning part, when it happened, and then everything else. I heard pretty good.
Okay, well, Chapultepec means the hill of the grasshopper. Chapulín. That's a Spanish word that was originally Aztec Nahuatl. So in the rest of the Spanish-speaking world, a grasshopper is a saltamontes, which literally means mountain jumper. But in Mexico, it's called a chapulín, a grasshopper. Chapultepec means the hill of the grasshopper. And on that hill, there was a castle that was built. The Aztecs used to live there. But it was a castle that became the home of Emperor Maximilian, and then it became a military academy. And it was a military academy when the Americans invaded. And the story goes that a group of cadets, instead of surrendering to the Americans, they wrapped themselves in Mexican flags and they jumped off the roof. So, yeah.
God. Cool. Well, that's awesome. And is that over close to where we are, or?
Yeah, well, it was close to where we are. It looks like we're going down one of the main drags now with all the big buildings.
Okay. Oh, okay. Maybe the place it was that big green area, that park.
Exactly, right. Yeah, that's where the park is. Chapultepec Park, and the castle is on the big hill that's there.
Oh, okay, great. Well, that's great.
And the castle looks very European because they had a European monarch who was a Habsburg, who was brought in by the conservative faction of Mexicans who wanted a monarchy. And Maximilian, even though he ruled for a few years, he did a lot of things for that country. And a lot of things that he did for the country are still there. A lot of the public works, the Paseo de la Reforma, I believe that's what the big where the street with all the big buildings, I believe that's the Paseo.
Yep.
But that was the Grand Avenue that led from the park to the central plaza, the Zocalo, the old heart of Mexico City, and he constructed that. He also, interestingly enough, as a European... No, I'm sorry. No, as a European transplant... As a European transplant, he was surprisingly an advocate for the indigenous people of Mexico. He wanted to revive and write down the indigenous languages, make dictionaries, promote the use of the languages, and preserve them, which is very interesting. You would think, I mean, he wasn't even Mexican, but that was one of, a major part of his legacy.
Cool. Very cool. I was just going to say, I'm really enjoying listening to you speak. You're so knowledgeable, and you're a good storyteller. I mean, this right now you're telling a historical fact, but it's still very well done. So I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay.
I've never heard of St. Patrick's Battalion. That's fascinating.
I'm sorry?
I've never heard of St. Patrick's Battalion.
You know what? It is a fascinating story. And if I were to ever write a book about that, I would want to track down the descendants, because I tried to find information about those members of the battalion who survived, who got pensions and ranches and, whatever, mansions from the government. What happened to them? They must have married, had kids. Where are their descendants right now?
You know what it reminds me of? It's loose, not nearly as extreme, but it reminds me of the Germans, the Nazi refugees down in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like a hint of that to it. Not saying the
Yeah.
Irish people are Nazis or this was as bad, but
Yeah.
it's got that feel. Like what are they doing now?
Yeah. Where are their descendants?
Did you know there's a Confederate holdover in South America? Like a
In
whole town?
Brazil, it's called
Yeah.
Americana. I've been
Yeah.
there. I lived in Brazil. I lived in Brazil for a little while, and I visited that. It's in the state
Really?
of Sao Paulo. Yeah. And it was funny. It's funny that you talk about that. I had a friend down there, and we went to university, and I was walking the hall of the university, and there was a name on the door, Maria Louisa Johnson. And then I said, Maria Louisa Johnson, what's that? And then she said, oh, é descendente americana. Oh, she's an American descendant. And that's funny. Being an American, we don't, you say you're an of Irish descent, you are Spanish descent, but down there they say, oh, I'm an American descendant. I'm of American descent. So what happened there, that's a segue, but I'll be brief. When the Civil War ended and slavery ended here in the United States, a bunch of Confederates went to South America and founded a few cities with plantations where they grew cotton. And one of them that survived was called Americana. And they have 4th of July picnics even to this day. And I've been to that place, and I went there kind of like as an anthropologist. When I was working in Sao Paulo, I had a free weekend, and I said, I'm just going to take a bus to Americana. And one of my coworkers said, why do you want to go there? All they do is grow cotton there. And I was like, okay, well, because I want to go. I want to see remnants of America. And I was looking around, and I, was like, oh, this is not what I thought. This looks kind of like a Brazilian town, except in the center plaza, there's a Baptist church with a steeple. It looks like something that came out of the South. And I was crossing a street, and I almost got hit by a police car. Police car stopped, and on the side of the door was the coat of arms of the city of Americana, and it had the stars and bars of the Confederacy in the coat of arms. I was like, oh, okay, there's part of the proof that I was looking for. But I thought it was kind of weird. And the people in that town, you can see there are people there who look Anglo-American, who are just walking around, who are, purely Brazilian, don't speak English. But yeah, that's an interesting town. It's funny you bring that up because I've actually been there.
It's crazy. I often wondered. This is funny but unironic question. I just wonder, like, if they follow what goes on in the actual South now, kind of like little tidbits of stuff. Like maybe what if they like follow college football and watch James
there's no connection really to modern U.S. culture other than the globalized, that you see Disney or whatever, all of that stuff.
I just wondered about them being South-based.
There's no real connection like that because there's so many generations removed that there's really not that much interest. But they do have picnics on the 4th of July where they serve watermelon and fried chicken and fried okra and stuff. I mean, it's really interesting.
Okay. That's not too far off then.
Yeah.
I always wondered if in like the back of my mind if they were like a satellite office, like maybe an annex, but it's
yeah. I think there's too much time, that's passed. But
that's
there are hundreds of thousands of people in Brazil who are descendentes americanos, as they say, American descendants. And that's interesting to hear as an American because we always see ourselves as the recipient of immigrants. We never see ourselves as immigrants. And people are very proud of their American heritage. So when they're down there, yeah.
That's optimistic to hear these days. A lot of times it's seen as a bad thing.
Right.
Especially on Reddit. I'm about to stop going on that site.
Uh,
Like, I'm sorry, I'm an American. I'll quit. All right, damn. Sorry, I have
cool.
guns.
I think now we're at a different location on the screen, and I think this is the Pena de Bernal. Is that correct?
Well, I'll treat you as like the teacher that broke up a sidebar class. If I could get the attention of everyone.
I mean, does that look like, the Peña de Bernal is like the volcanic plug that's in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I don't know if this is too high or I can't really tell, I guess.
That's an ancient tree truck, Robert. How dare you?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going down the mud flood, orphan trains.
Younger Dryas or nothing. Pre-Clovis, buddy.
World's Fair. What's the other one?
Mud flood.
What's part of that? Mud flood.
Tartarian Empire.
Tartarian Empire. Right. Okay.
Now we're doing it. I'm gonna light one up. Now it's Rogan.
Okay, so yeah, that does look like Peña de Bernal, and that is a volcanic plug. It's very old, and it's composed of silica-rich rock, so it hasn't eroded that much. So it's just sticking up. And it's the third tallest monolith in the world behind Gibraltar and Pau de Açúcar, Sugarloaf Mountain in Brazil. So that's the third tallest, Peña de Bernal. It's not the third largest. The largest is Ayers Rock or Uluru in the central part of Australia. If you go by volume, the Peña de Bernal is not even in the top 10. But as far as height from its base to the top, it's the third tallest monolith. And people believe that there's a lot of paranormal activity going on there. And from everything from UFOs to strange creatures to sightings of people like Saint Germain, people believe that they've had encounters with actual saints. Saint Germain is one of the people that people have believed. Also, Jacques de Molay, I believe, people have said that they've seen the guy who started the Templars, the Knights Templar. It's weird. I mean, why would you be seeing two historical figures roaming around this mountain? But people have alleged that. And creatures, like I said, Alushas, Chaneques, the little people, UFO activity, and the town of San Sebastian that's on the foot of this mountain was designated a magical town by the country of Mexico, a pueblo mágico. It means basically it has this designation of being historical and charming and stuff. And we're giving out that designation a lot to a lot of different towns. But because it's a pueblo mágico, it draws a lot of tourists. And what I found with a lot of paranormal sites in Mexico, sometimes I would say, unfortunately, people want to try to make money and they make up stuff. So it's hard to sift through what was seen and heard and discussed before the commercialization, before the tourists started to come in mass. But some of the things that I've seen is that people have had encounters with that Saint Germain on the mountain, and also the little people and the UFOs. Those predate a lot of the commercialization of the area. And people give paranormal tours. You can stay at a ranch there that's like, what's the ranch? Skinwalker Ranch or whatever. You can stay at a ranch there, and they take night trips to the Peña, to the monolith and stuff. So there's a lot going on there. There's like something for everybody there.
Wow.
And then people say that it's on the same line of latitude of the pyramids, the Bermuda Triangle, and the ancient cities of Tibet. So there's some more to it, There's like everything there.
What is the definition of a monolith? How do you define
a big rock? I don't know. I think just a big rock. So
Did you seen a 2001 Space Odyssey?
Well, that were they calling that a monolith, right? Yeah, big rock. Yeah, just a yeah, I guess so. But like the Devil's Tower for Close Encounters, it's the same thing, you know. This big volcanic plug, or if you really want to go there, a big tree stump. Yeah.
Wasn't I making a reference to that like 2 or 3 days ago? Didn't I do that? Didn't I do the mashed potato thing on the last podcast we did?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you were talking about mashed potatoes.
This means something. This is important. Oh no! I said if I lived, yeah, we were talking about the UFOs and Bigfoot. If I lived and I knew Bigfoot was real, I knew UFOs were real, I wouldn't do anything else, and I would be Richard Dreyfuss just all the time, just insane. I couldn't go on my daily life knowing I had a Bigfoot in my backyard. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, right.
I put a saddle on that sucker. It's a Bigfoot. I'm not going to work at the mill.
So for this place, I go into it a little bit more in depth. If you want to check out, I believe it's episode 256. 256 is about the Peña de Bernal. And you know what I like about being a YouTuber is the comment sections. And that's where the real gold is. And as someone who presents this stuff and researches this stuff, it's also my right to learn from people who contribute to the comment section. And there's always gold, always gold. I always learn so much from the people who, you know, take the time and leave the comments about their experiences and stuff. I'm really grateful for that.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's I'm glad you mentioned it again, because I made a note of that. You said the comments are so good on your Lechusa video. Well, actually, you did that with Bobby's interview, but I was like, I gotta check that out. But yeah, I noticed that on a lot of paranormal videos. Yeah, people will just give you extra information about their own experiences.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to learn.
Okay, well, excellent. Okay, well, yeah, that's a really cool place. I think we got 2 more places. Okay, so let me get the next one ready for everybody. Let's see. I guess while I'm pulling it up, Robert, I wanted to ask you,
sure,
what is the creation myth for the indigenous people of Mexico, and is it the same, or how do they differ?
Well, you know what? There are so many different creation myths, and even within a certain people. Let's just take the Aztecs, the Mexica, the Nahuatl-speaking people. They have different creation myths, creation stories within their own culture. There was one emperor called, the emperor was called Ahuizotl, who tried to standardize the religion, the Aztec religion, throughout the empire. And he had some success with it and established state rules, state dogma for things. But every indigenous culture has their own different creation myth. And within some of these cultures, there are multiple stories. And I know with the Aztecs, there's probably 5 or 6 different creation stories, the Maya too. It gets complicated. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so now we should be over the Zona de Silencio is where we're flying.
Looks like there's water there. There shouldn't be water.
Yeah. Is it? Well, I think it's going to be, we're going toward that area from my coordinates, so it's next to the water. Are you saying there's no water at all anywhere near it?
No, it's so dry there. It's the middle of the desert. It's a biosphere reserve, Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, and it's called the Zona de Silencio, which in English is the zone of silence. And there's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on there. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff that happens there. Everything, once again, almost like the Peña de Bernal, there's strange creatures, but there's a lot of other different anomalies. For example, there's magnetic anomalies. most people don't know about a man named, what was his name? Francisco Sarabia Tinoco. Sarabia Tinoco. He was Mexico's Charles Lindbergh. So in the 1920s, there's always a counterpart for something in Mexico. Like the Zona de Silencio is called the Mexican Bermuda Triangle. So for everything paranormal, and it seems like everything else, there's the Mexican counterpart. So the Mexican Charles Lindbergh, this pioneer aviator, was the first to note while flying over this area, which is now the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, also called the Zona de Silencio. All of his directional instruments, all the instruments on his panel started to freak out and just go haywire. So he was the first one to talk about that sort of thing. And the area has since had this reputation. People think that there are vortexes there that suck things in. There was once a missile that was launched from Utah in the United States that went off course and crash landed there. And people believe that it crash landed there because there's this magnetic vortex that sucks things in. And there have been a couple of, meteor crashes and things like that there, and even some plane crashes. But, then there are people that believe that there's a civilization that's living underground there called, it's the Magneto Zen, I think they call it. There's a group, a new age group, that believes that there are people living underground. They call themselves the Yellow Maya. And I don't know what to make of that. It's far from the Maya area, but people believe that there were refugees from the Maya area that went there, and now they're living underground. And when the biosphere was first established and they started to construct buildings, people who lived in the area believed that NASA was constructing something underground there, and also some of the surface buildings were going to be used for research for NASA. So we don't know what's happening. The area was known to locals for a while, but it became known outside of Mexico when these mysterious diaries were appearing online in Spanish. There was a guy who worked in the park named Hector Alvarez, and his diaries started to appear on the internet. Whether they were real or not, I don't know. But it drew the focus to this area. And in the diaries, this park ranger talked about black triangles that he saw, strange plants that were growing. And a lot of people have mentioned that there were weird forms of cactus, like they were affected by radiation. And in the diaries, he talked about how there were computers in their ranger station, some of them that weren't even plugged in, all of a sudden were emitting this white light and this humming noise. And then some of them blew up. So there was all of this stuff on the internet about these diaries, and that park ranger disappeared and no one has heard of him since. His car was in the parking lot one day and no one heard of him. So who knows, right?
Wow. Yeah. Very chilling. Very interesting.
I think I've heard that Utah missile story before. That rang a bell.
Yeah. And I talk about this. This was one of my earlier shows because I was really fascinated. I think it's episode 54. If you look at episode 54, it's about the Zone of Silence. If you want to go to my YouTube channel or whatever and look at more stuff. But since I've done that show, there's more information that's on the internet. Most of it's in Spanish, though. But there's more information about this Zone of Silence because it's become more popular and more well-known throughout the world now.
And where does the name come from? The Zone of Silence part. What is silent about this area? Is that part of the story?
Yeah, because sometimes it goes to the electrical malfunction stuff. Your radio goes off, everything. You can go out in there and everything is just dead and it's dead silent. So it's the zone of silence because it's just incredibly quiet. Everything shuts down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And it's called the Mexican Bermuda Triangle. That's the other term for it.
Right. Cool. All right. Let's see. Let me pull up the next one. Let's see. Well, actually, I think that was the last one. Okay, cool. Well, so I have another question now since I think that was the last video. We went to like 4 different areas. Okay, I wanted to share with you guys and the audience a story I just collected last night. And I was specifically, Robert, I wanted to see if this sounds familiar to anything, at least story you've heard, because there's some interesting details in it. The only other thing is it happened in Central America, so not in Mexico, but it happened in Costa Rica. Okay, so this is the story. There was this girl, and when she was younger, she was like 10. She remembers waking up at night, and then she saw this animal in her house in Costa Rica. So she said it was all black. It was walking on all 4. Okay. It didn't have any eyes at all, so the eyes were gone. It had a tail, and at the tip of the tail, it looked like a triangle. She calls it a demon. Its mouth was no nose, very small nose. The mouth was very small, but she did think there was like teeth in there. And then she said that it ran toward her and attacked her physically. So it was choking her, and she could feel it was laughing evilly with evil intent. And every time it choked her, she felt like it was sucking her energy more. So she was kind of unable to move. The other interesting detail is that she remembers one time she tried to push it off of her, but she couldn't. It was very rubbery. She said it was almost like it had no bones, so it wasn't its skin would just kind of, its whole body would just kind of stretch. Well, anyway, eventually she was screaming or making a commotion and then she called her grandma to come. And she said that in her mind, as soon as this creature that was on top of her choking her realized that the grandma was up, it got off her and it jumped out a window. And she has told me, and then her grandma saw her and she was hysterical, and she has told it to people. She says some people say, it was a dream, but she told me that as of today, I think 10 years later, she still insists it was a physical creature that attacked her. So I just wanted, Robert, do any of those details sound similar to legends you've heard?
No, I mean, that's a new one to me. Huh? Cool. No, that's interesting though. But you know what? Creatures appear. Creatures appear all the time. You always hear someone say, well, I saw this upright walking thing that is not a Bigfoot. It's not a Nahual. It's not a Chupacabra. Or it's not a werewolf. It's something else entirely. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you're right about that. There's, the variety of paranormal activity. I mean, paranormal is a category that humans came up with, but I've thought about this. Like, what do I consider paranormal? I really think in order to fit in that category, it's probably something that is outside of human understanding at this point. That doesn't necessarily mean it's real or not, but I'm just saying it seems to be a phenomenon that we can't fully explain. That would fit in the paranormal. And there's a large variety of things in the paranormal, even when it comes to animals. Like Robert said, you have weird one-off monsters that don't seem to fit in a category. But that makes me think about how it could seem overwhelming if you get too deep in the rabbit hole with the paranormal. You may feel very overwhelmed because there's so much we don't know. But one thing that I've been hearing from a lot of people is that if you want to get a better grasp on the paranormal, you should cultivate your own psychic or mind skills, which every human has. And the practical, easy way to do that is by meditating. So it sounds like it would be beneficial. I know it's for health-wise, it's beneficial to meditate, even if you don't believe in the paranormal. But it sounds like to get more control of the paranormal, or maybe not feel so overwhelmed, meditation is the answer so that you could cultivate your own psychic skills.
Basically. I've heard that, and shamanism going back thousands of years in Mexico, there's that element of that too. sorcery, shamanism. There's that element of developing your mind, just like what you're saying. So we don't know how powerful we really are, I don't think.
Yeah, that's something I'm also starting to suspect, is that the human mind specifically, I guess, or soul, whatever, if it's trained properly, or some individuals may have the skills innately, but I think that's rare. But every human has a very strong mind. And I could see how maybe it would be suppressed, because I could see a possibility where a human can train themselves to be able to kill somebody with just their mind. So you could assassinate somebody. So I wonder if that a potential for abuse is why some people who know may not want everybody to know. But
well, I don't think that is it. I think it's the opposite, because the potential for good is there. And so we're distracted by, what did Bobby say? Reddit. And what's happening next Tuesday? I know this is evergreen. Your shows are, and they'll be on the internet for 1,000 years. But next Tuesday is election day in America, red and blue and all of that stuff. That's taking the focus outside of you and your own power, and that, what does that have to do with cultivating your mind? Nothing. It's a distraction. So if we really did realize the power of our own minds, that would really pose a big threat to the power structure. So get us all quibbling over all this little stuff and get us sucked into social media and, posting nasty stuff on Twitter and all of that stuff, and who's right and who's wrong, and this issue and that issue, and, what pronouns to use and all that stuff. How does that help you? How does that enrich your mind to become a more powerful person? It doesn't. It doesn't help you at all. It's a time suck. It's an attention suck. And it takes away from your own self-development, I think. And I think it's designed to do that.
Well, I agree with you 100%, because the other realization, just agreeing with you, that I'm starting to make with this paranormal stuff is, number one, meditation is important because your mind is very powerful. Number two, the other revelation is that modern society is built the exact opposite of the way you would want it to cultivate those powers. Everything is against what the other thing says. Everything's about short distractions, splintering your mind in a million pieces. It's not about meditation,
And what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Sorry to interrupt you, but what does that tell us?
Right.
Yeah. So
the elite are trying to do it.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, that's right. Well, yeah, Robert, thank you. That is really deep. I think what you said is true about society and about.
I think social media happened on accident, though.
Well, you know what? I think a lot of things happen. They may have happened on accident, but then they take it and run with it.
Oh, they ran with it quickly.
Okay, let's say if you look at what happened in the past 2.5 years, were masks going to be adopted by everybody? It worked. People caught on to it, and then they said, "Aha! Look, this has worked. We're going to keep this going." What if everybody decided not to wear a mask? We wouldn't have had mask mandates go on in some cases for years. In California, forget it. Here in San Diego, forget it. But they saw that it worked, so they kept it. They said, aha, they stumbled on something that worked. Okay, they tried this, they tried that. Aha, we got them now. And so social media, it may have been an accident. And you're probably right. I think it might have been.
I'm talking about bleeding edge.
Exactly right. And then they saw, aha, now this is something that we can use. And so here we are.
Yeah, it's one of the crazy things about technology in modern times is that the speed of everything and the connectivity has not been here even a few decades ago, and that could be used negatively. That could be used to influence people in a negative way. Here's an interesting comment from someone. Let's go ahead and put it up.
Where's that one at? I didn't see that one in there.
It's a brand new one.
Oh, no, jeez.
So, Cuckoo B, thank you for being here. I sure appreciate it. Please subscribe. She says, "Oh boy, ... That's all metaphysical. Sounds like okay. If I could respond to that, first of all, yeah, that you're correct. You are correct. I actually didn't really know what metaphysical was, so then I went on one of my episodes actually. I looked up the definition. So, what is metaphysical? From what I remember, is yeah, it means like not really being able to understood, not really understood very well, outside the grasp of human endeavors. So yeah, what we're talking about the meditation thing and the mind stuff, I do think it fits in that category. But what all that means is that we don't fully understand it yet. That we don't have all the documented evidence in books and it's all organized. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. It could be not true, but yeah, you're right. It is metaphysical. The evidence, well, I will say the evidence is there, but I understand the evidence is not all organized. But the main thing is those topics we're talking about, meditation and our mind and improving ourselves and the planet. The main thing is that yeah, it's not proven to be correct. I do agree with that, but it doesn't mean it's not true. Like I always like to remind scientists that just because the evidence doesn't exist for a claim to support it, that is a golden standard. We all want repeatability, which is one of the two things you need in science. You need to have, if you say something is true, someone else has to be able to do it and consistently show it's true. You need to have repeatability. You need to have a hard evidence as well, evidence that has proven that claim. But if just because there's evidence, just because there's no evidence doesn't mean it's not true. So, for an example, we now know that germs are correct. We know that diseases and microbes are correct. We know they make us sick. Okay, like 500 years ago, we didn't know that. So there was no evidence to support that. However, it was still true.
But do we?
Potentially.
Why do they call it germ theory then? What's a theory? Theory is something that hasn't been proven. Germ theory. That's interesting. Interesting use of words there, huh?
Well, yeah, that is interesting. Well, this is my understanding about how the current thinking about germ theory is that certain bacteria, microbes can get on our skin or inside our body and make us sick. And I think my understanding is the reason why we believe that is because the microscope came along and it allowed us to see and observe these animals. And then people just started making observations and running experiments, and it showed the evidence to be true. But there was a time when those experiments didn't exist. Like I said, the microscope didn't exist, but you know, the microbes were still there, the bacteria. But yeah, I don't know, Robert. What you want to take that a little bit further? I'm curious now.
Actually,
did you pull that out of a hat?
Well, no. I want people to think about that. Germ theory. You tell me why it's still called that. What's a theory? A theory is something that hasn't been proven. It's right there in front of your face. Germ theory. Go with it.
Right. Well,
I'll leave it up to the audience and anybody else who wants to look at that. Sure, but it's called germ theory for a reason.
Of course. And then, I mean, I would add to that, Robert, you know, just in the same things you're saying is basically, I think that the theory part, basically you're saying that it could be wrong. It's not set in stone. I think that applies to every single thing in science. Science is self-correcting. So like I used to work at a museum. So when I would give tours in a museum, I would tell people like, okay, you're going to have fun. You're going to learn stuff. You're going to read stuff in the plaques. But I don't mind telling you that it could be that everything you read there is not true. And that in 50 years, it'll be changed. And that's still okay because that is built into science. So I guess, you know, there's nothing wrong with questioning these long-held scientific ideas. A true scientist should not be against that. You should be able to question every single thing in science. It's built into the system. It's self-correcting. But yeah, that's interesting, Robert. I
Go down that rabbit hole.
That was out of nowhere. I was like, what? It is. It's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff when it hits you in the face. You're like that's been in front of me my entire life, and I'm just now.
That's right. It's right in front of your face. Germ theory. Okay, so we have a question.
Yeah, I believe this is from O. Thank you for being here, O. I've never seen you. Please subscribe. O says, did the Aztecs come from caves? Any association with caves and Aztecs?
According to their origin story, they did come from a series of caves. And then they migrated out of the caves and eventually ended up to central Mexico. So yeah, that's part of the foundation of their origin story.
Wow. Very good question. Very good question.
So someone knows their stuff right there, I think. Or they've heard something and they want it verified. But yeah, that according to their legends, they did originating a series of caves.
Cool. And then O continues. He says, "Keep going, wise mind." So thank you for that.
Oh, that's nice.
I guess that means I can leave then.
No, you're part of the whole thing. So.
Let's see.
Comic relief.
Cool.
I'm over here just Googling everything we've talked about. I'm 3 steps behind the entire conversation. I'm like, what?
Okay, I had one more topic I wanted to talk about as well. I know we've done an hour, but if we could do one more topic, if that's okay with you, Robert?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We've talked a lot. Almost every time, I'll tell you right now, this is my 4th time talking to Robert for at least an hour. So you can watch him on Black Lotus. If you go to my playlist called Wild Trees, Black Lotus with Wild Trees. And then this is the second interview on this channel that I talked to Robert. But anyway, why I say this is because every time me and Robert talk, we always end up talking about La Lechuza. La Lechuza always comes up, as well as La Llorona. But La Lechuza comes up, and this is supposed to be a cryptid, an animal that's a giant flying animal. It's supposed to live in northern Mexico, Rio Grande Valley. It's sometimes described to look as an owl, or is that necessary, Robert? Does it have to look like an owl in order to?
It's always described as an owl.
It is always described as an owl.
Yeah.
Okay,
as a gigantic owl. Yeah,
gigantic owl. Now, I'm remembering one detail that you said in one of those past interviews, and you said that if you remember that you read or talked to somebody who had a very up close sighting with one, like they hit it with the car or the windshield. Does that sound familiar? Okay.
Yeah, someone. You know what? You can go into the comments section of that episode in my website or my YouTube channel, and you'll see people with their encounters. And there was one person that supposedly hit it, and then it went over the car. And then they saw it in the rear view mirror coming after. It's like out of a movie or something, you know? But yeah, there have been reports of that. And supposedly, according to the folklore, if you do shoot this with a gun, then it will eventually turn back into a woman, a human woman, because the belief is that it really was a witch that turns into this gigantic owl. So that's part of the folklore that may help to describe this cryptid that explains, why people see this thing. But yeah, there are plenty of stories about this. I mean, and you don't have to go to my website. You can just do a Google search, and it's becoming more and more talked about now. So yeah, I'm sure you can find some more stories out there.
Very cool. Yeah, so that's a really big animal. And then the other thing is that, Robert had mentioned in Bobby's podcast that of any of the things that could be true that's going on in Mexico, it's very possible that this one is true. There is some legitimate animal, or people are seeing a large animal in these parts of Mexico and Texas.
Yeah, and like I said in the previous show, there are vast expanses where no one's living there. I mean, deserts, high mountains, inaccessible canyons where people just don't go. And there could be a habitat for a creature like this. There are other cryptids too in Mexico. There's the Mexican onza, which some people believe are remnants of the ancient North American prehistoric cheetah that used to be in North America, that was actually in prehistory, along with woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, all that. So there's a belief out there. There have been eyewitnesses, carcasses of these animals that people believe are remnants of an ancient North American cheetah population. And they could survive in a large habitat in Mexico, in the mountains. It's possible.
Yeah, it's very possible. There's a lot of wilderness as far as Mexico. Do you think okay? I know that America has a lot of open space, and it's got a lot of cities. But my question is about the ratio with Mexico. So, does Mexico have a high ratio of wilderness versus human settlements? Is it higher than the United States ratio?
I would think it's about the same. Yeah, okay. I think it's about the same. Yeah,
and that would mean it's high. It's very high.
Right. Because in Mexico, you have these massive urban areas, just like in America. You have, the megalopolis from Boston to Washington or whatever. Then you have like where I live. If you drove up the coast, it would be hours before you could reach. I mean, I could get into wilderness in about 20 minutes. But if I headed north, it's nonstop city, Yeah. With the exception of Camp Pendleton, the Marine base in between. From here to LA, it's pure city, So you have these massive areas of cities, and in Mexico, it's the same thing. And then you have these gigantic open spaces and mountains. So, yeah.
So what about this? What about the future of Mexico? This is a big question, and it's like a political question, and we're just trying to predict the future. But what is the future of Mexico? Do you think economically, socially? Is it going to? I know there's a lot of corruption there. Is it going to get better? The corruption is the city going to grow? Is it going to stay the same? I mean, just what direction is the city going? Do you think? The country. I'm sorry.
I don't. It's hard to say because the pendulum swings there like it does here. There's corruption in America. The stakes are higher. The game is bigger here. Of course, there's going to be the same thing here. It's funny. I was talking to a Mexican about American voting and things like that, and he said, "Isn't the voting there completely, transparent and it's all fair and politics is all clean in the United States?" And I said, "No, the stakes are bigger here. There's more money involved. Of course, there's going to be shady stuff happening in the United States. We'd like to think that we're so above everybody else. Some African dictator can pull off some ballot stuffing, but we don't ever do that here. Or, blah, blah, blah. You can go on or whatever. I'm not a very political person. But as far as Mexico's future goes, it's really hard to say because, like I said in the previous show, there's so many natural resources there, especially in the central part of Mexico. Yeah. The climate is perfect. 70, 72 degrees year round. It's absolutely beautiful. The soils are good. Mexico in colonial times was extremely productive. There were so many wealthy people in colonial times in Mexico that some people said, visitors from Europe said that the Mexicans with their haciendas and silver mines and everything, it was more opulent than the European aristocracy. Some of the haciendas were so palatial that they were bigger and better and more ornate and better furnished than the king's palace in Madrid or the palaces of all the other European monarchs. It was once an incredibly rich country, and it can always be that way again. And you just have to have the right conditions, the right people, I guess. Right. But it's hard to predict the future. It's hard to predict the future of the United States. We don't know where we're going.
I couldn't tell you either.
Is the pendulum going to swing back? Are we going to go deeper into a hole? Are we going to have so much prosperity we're not going to even know what to do with it? We don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, yeah, that's great. But I do like your answer. It gives a lot of context and it gives us more information about Mexico. I think a lot of today was just learning things that we didn't really know about Mexico.
Yeah, I was flabbergasted for a lot of it, to be honest.
Yeah. O has another question about Aztecs. Let me pull it up here.
Oh,
Chaco Canyon's relationship with the Aztec. Does this ring a bell?
Chaco Canyon, I've been there. It's in New Mexico, and I used to live in New Mexico. I grew up there. But I went there with a high school buddy of mine. I remember people also don't think that the United States has massive ruins. Chaco Canyon is just crazy big. There are huge structures there, kivas, circular structures. It's an amazing place. People believe it was inhabited by the Anasazi people, and that's a Navajo word. I believe it means the ancient ones, I believe. But it was inhabited by the Anasazi, and they believe that there was a drought like 1,000 years ago, and then the people migrated. Some people believe that the Aztecs are the Anasazi. We know that linguistically the Aztecs are related to southwestern peoples in the American Southwest. So there is a possible connection between Chaco Canyon and the Aztec world because the dates line up. The Aztecs appeared in central Mexico. They were migrating. They appeared around 1200 or so AD, and Chaco Canyon was collapsing around 1000 AD, I believe. There were still people there. It's hard to tell, and I'm not really sure because that's not my expertise, Chaco Canyon. I believe the dates, though, are right. There was a drought throughout the Southwest. A lot of people believe that the Aztecs did migrate from that area. So there could be a connection.
Wow, very cool, man. That's like a great history lesson. Thank you so much for that. Great answer. Earlier we had in the room, let's see, I'm going to show this comment. Okay, so we have...
hello. I don't know who that is, but hi back.
Tolkos420. Thank you for being here, Tolkos420. That's a pretty cool name. He says, hello, Robert Bitto. So yeah, thank you for being here. I'm happy to have you. And please subscribe. And also thank you for Melinda for being here. As I said, thank you. Cuckoo B, thank you for being here. Kevin, thank you for being here. Bobby, of course, in the comments, but also here. And also, Nina Williams, I know you watch. Welcome to the show, Mr. Catfish, and Scotty B, and John P. Adventures. I think that's a lot of the regulars. Iowax. These are people that I know will watch later.
Can we get a wellness check on Iowax? I haven't heard from him today.
Somebody
call the cops to his house.
Iowax is a musician. He posts on Facebook and he's like freestyling, but he posts the most interesting comments. Like it's like poetry or like lyrics or it's very imaginative stuff. But he's usually here.
No, it's too bad he's not here tonight.
Yeah. Also, let me see. I was going to say, put this comment up right here. Okay. This is going back just a little bit, but I mean, this is my specialty. I am a scientist. So Melinda, the other biologist, she just says, the definition of a theory in science is different than the common usage. So let me just read the definition. I have it right here. I just pulled it up. So that's a good thing because a lot of people, here's the thing. A lot of people in their common language, they'll say, I have a theory that tacos taste better when you put pepper on them, but they really don't have a theory. What they actually have is a hypothesis. So a lot of people in common usage, they should really say, my hypothesis is, because what you're trying to say is you have an idea that can be tested and seen if it's verified, which is different than a theory. But let me see. But yeah, germ theory is a theory. And here's the definition. It's very simple to understand. It says a supposition, so it means you're supposing something, or a system of ideas intended to explain something. Okay, so the theory explains something. In germ theory's case, it explains what causes sickness and how the animals are causing it. Okay, especially one based on general principles, independent of the thing to be explained. So the second part means that a lot of times it's supported by experiments and data that's generated in a scientific peer-reviewed journal. So it's one part's a system, the other part is that it's being supported by hard data that is independent of your thought. But I will say that doesn't get science off the hook. Science can still be wrong because the experiments may have been done wrong. We may have understood the data wrong. There are also hoaxers out there. So a theory is flexible, and we have to be okay with that. If we truly believe in the principles of science, it is self-correcting. I always try to put some science in here. Like I sneak into science, like trying to get the kids to eat their vegetables. But okay, Scotty V made it. Scotty B's from Wisconsin. Thank you so much. He's a big gardener. He makes a lot of salsa as well in his garden. Okay, and then here is backtrack a little bit to a comment Melinda had to say. And okay, she says, didn't the Anasazi use ladders to get to their dwellings in the cliffs? And they planted crops on top of the cliffs.
Right. Yeah, that is correct.
Cool.
I guess there's nothing else to say. They also planted crops down in the valleys too. Yeah, but they did use ladders. Some Anasazi sites are more built up than others. So yeah, and the Pueblos later used the same sort of building techniques and stuff too.
I was going to ask you, are there any famous UFO crashes and maybe crash retrievals in Mexico, like our Roswell, for instance?
Yeah, there's Coyame is a very famous one where there was a flying saucer that crashed, and people believe that the saucer was taken away by the Americans, by NASA, and witnesses to the crash, military people who showed up at the site were all killed. So that's verifiable. Yeah. But there were a couple of other crashes too. There was one in Puebla, in the state of Puebla, in the 1970s, and there was a film crew filming a movie nearby at the time, and all of them witnessed this crash. And some people believe that it was a Russian satellite that went down, but then other people believe that it was, extraterrestrial. So, and the Mexican government officially at the time went with the whole Soviet satellite thing. So,
that's funny.
Convenient.
Yeah.
That's a common thing. There was another case in America that they try to use this. So they had a UFO case that came down and it dropped some molten material. And Jack Vallée and Gary Nolan just wrote a scientific paper about it. I go over that in my videos. If you look at I think it's called Scientific Evidence for a UFO by Gary Nolan and Jack Vallée. But anyway, in that paper, when I go over it, at the time, they try to use the Russian satellite thing as a possible cover for the UFO. So I guess that's super common. It was so much easier back then. You could just be like, oh, it's a Russian satellite, of course. Don't worry about it.
And because it was in the early 70s, it was long before the Mexican government had this open, more transparent attitude towards investigating UFOs. That only started in the early 2000s. So, yeah, back then there was a lot of covering up and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's interesting that all these different places have UFO crashes. America, maybe if you go to any large enough country, they're going to have UFO crashes. It just makes it more common. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Robert. I went over it a little bit, but I feel like we could go longer.
Yeah, I was about to say, we're done? What? Huh?
It's still 2 p.m. where Robert is.
Yeah, right.
He just got done eating lunch.
Well, so I will open it up, Bobby. I mean, if you have something you'd like to say, definitely.
Oh no, I'm a mere spectator at this point. I'm listening. You know me. I take it in.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll ask Robert another question, but it kind of goes with what we've been saying. So, you've taught us a lot about Mexico and corrected some misconceptions and just brand new, fascinating facts. Mm-hmm. And I know that's part of what you like to do. So I just wonder if you could be direct, like, what would you like people to know about Mexico? Someone who doesn't know anything about Mexico. What's the most important things we should know about this country?
I would say explore Mexico beyond the stereotypes, because a lot of people have this fixed image about Mexico in their minds. During the last podcast and this one, we did talk about the snowfields, for example. Just one little example is Iztaccíhuatl, the volcano that has permanent snowpack. Now, how many people think of alpine rescue and snow glaciers when they think of Mexico? Not a whole lot of people do. Or pine forests where there could be a possible Bigfoot creature. Pine forests in Mexico? Who thinks that? Not a whole lot of people. There's a lot to know about Mexico, and it's a very diverse country. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to explore. It's not just getting drunk on spring break in Cancun or, whatever like that, or Clint Eastwood movies, the dusty Mexican town or whatever. It's a vibrant, modern country that is also very ancient, and it's just an incredible place. I've lived there twice in my life, and I go down there all the time. So I would encourage people to learn more about Mexico and ditch the stereotypes, because, yeah, it's a world unto itself.
I'm going to ask a very ignorant question.
There's no such thing.
But the recent movie tropes, the cartel, I have to mention at least one. Is that as big a factor? It can't be as big a factor as they make you think it is.
You know what? Sometimes I think it's worse than what we're being told. Actually, it is. It's a horrible thing, and yeah, there's Satanism involved. There's all of this. Oh, that could be a whole other show. But one thing I want to tell you, I mean, I'll talk about anything to anybody. When I do my shows, talking about the cartels is something that I would never do a show on the cartels, because I don't want my head to end up in a box mailed to my elderly parents. That's what I say. But that's making light of a very serious situation, and I apologize to anybody.
There's truth there, and I think there's a lesson there in that joke. Let's call it.
But you know what? In some cases, it's a lot worse than what we're being told. Mass killings, hangings under bridges, all of that stuff that you hear is true. And as somebody who has been doing business in Mexico, I've been doing business in Mexico for 23 years. I lived there in the mid-90s. I lived there in the late 80s. I've seen it get worse. Even someone like me, I'm a seasoned traveler down there. I will never go on rural roads after dark. Do not ever travel. And I sound like some scared, American college girl or something. Someone might think, oh, it's so dangerous or whatever. But I'm telling you, I have a ton of experience down there. And if I'm not willing to do that, travel at night on the rural roads, let me tell you, then you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be considering it. It's incredibly dangerous. Not only the cartels, but there's bandits that are out there. Bandidos, instead of wearing the bullets across the chest, riding a horse and, stealing your gold pesos, there are people who carjack at night who are not cartel related. So if you're going to spend any time at night in Mexico, in a big city, it's okay in certain parts, but I would stay off of the back roads and stuff, because it is dangerous.
My question was just for if I wanted to go see hike those mountains or something like that, what factor that would play into it, basically.
Well, you know what? Like those national parks and stuff like that, it's pretty safe. Like I said, the rural areas, stay away at night. You don't want to be on a road alone. But you never know when an act of terrorism or something will happen. The city I stayed in when I was a student in 1989, when I was a college student, I'm dating myself, I know. But that was 32 33 years ago. Oh my gosh, that's a third of a century ago. But a bomb went off, not when I was there, but into the 2000s. It must have been like 2005 or whatever, when I was still doing business down there. A bomb went off next to the cathedral and it killed like dozens of people. That was one of the most peaceful, beautiful places. I used to hang out there. When I used to be able to sketch things, I don't know what happened to my artistic talent, but I sketched that cathedral and I spent so much time in that plaza, and I can't even imagine a bomb going off there, but it did. It was two drug families having a feud, and they just blew up the place. So you never know when the violence is going to spill over into a place that's peaceful and beautiful. But, fortunately, it's not the norm. It's a very rare thing that something like that would happen.
That almost sounds like the mass shootings we have in North America. And United States,
Well, yeah, these are, violent, drug-related turf wars and things like that.
The cause is very different. The cause is totally different, but there's basically a mass killing in an unexpected place.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, wow.
But I'd say overall, to anybody listening or watching, don't let the whole cartel thing limit you from going and traveling there. Okay. There are dangerous places everywhere. When I owned my retail store in Central Phoenix, I was held up at gunpoint and tied up, and a customer found me. I mean, I was in my own colorful little world that I created myself in a safe city, and I was the subject of random violence. So, and it's funny because in all my travels in Latin America, nothing has ever happened to me quite like what happened to me in the United States in my own business. Yeah. So, I mean, think about that the way you want to think about it. I mean, everything is kind of random, I think, but just as a general rule, stay off the back roads at night. It's not a good idea to be traveling at night.
The ironic thing is here in where I live, that's where I thrive. That's like the back roads at nights. That's like my world. I ended up getting myself killed.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, me too. I do love going through back country roads at night because I'm a researcher. A lot of times the Texas natural preserves where I work, they're usually in the middle of nothing. There's no large cities. It's just like lots of little tiny pueblos, American pueblos. So I end up spending a lot of time driving down these lonely back country roads. But yeah, if there's one important the lesson for this episode, if you're going to learn one thing, is if you're in Mexico, do not go out at night on the back roads of rural areas. Maybe you're okay at a large city in certain places at night. Don't push your luck. Do not push your luck.
Anywhere you're around a lot of people, let's say back to that cathedral central square in Morelia that I was talking about, where the bomb went off. Wherever there's a lot of people at night, you're totally safe. And Mexico City has this reputation of being dangerous and everything. And what they did is they hired all these police officers, and to be more friendly to women, the new hires, Rudolph Giuliani was actually the consultant that went down there and had them revise their police department. Half of the new hires of the police department had to be women. So there are all of these police officers everywhere in Mexico City now. You can turn around and there's a cop, and it's just like to keep eyes on things, much like a rent-a-cop in the US, like some security guard outside a mall or something. It's that sort of thing. So Mexico City is actually safer now than it was like 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh, damn. I didn't know that too. That's great information. I didn't know that. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I'll ask you right now, Robert. Okay, I'm looking for a city to stay in Mexico for a while. I mentioned Monterrey, but Monterrey, you said, it's kind of a hardworking man city. It's an industrial place, and there's more relaxed places. What's just another place that would be good for an expat like myself, who likes nature, who likes calm? areas?
I would say Morelia, the one where the bomb went off. I know that's terrible. No, but that city is a nice one. Guadalajara is kind of big, but it's still, there are parts of it that are nice that, I mean, have a more relaxed feel to it. I would go with Morelia, or a really good place would be Guanajuato. Look at that. It's a colonial city that is super, super cheap. And it's small, it's tight, there's a lot of culture there, and you can be off in the mountains like a half an hour, from there. So if I wanted to live in Mexico personally myself, I would either go back to Morelia or Guanajuato. Guanajuato is smaller than Morelia. Morelia is more of a big city, but it still is colonial. Guanajuato, or even Querétaro. Querétaro is another one that you should look into. Yeah. And they're in the temperate zone, so it's just beautiful weather. It's amazing weather.
I think a benefit I have is my parents, they set up me and my siblings a dual citizenship. So I believe I am a Mexican citizen as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So then you can own property on the beach, and you can own property within, I think it's 10 miles of the border, because if you're a foreigner, you can't own oceanfront property or property on the border within, I believe it's 10 miles. I could be wrong. It's either 10 or 15 miles from the border, because in the Mexican Constitution, they didn't want foreigners to be buying up beachfront property so that there could be a beachhead for an invasion. And then they didn't want Americans specifically, to be buying up property near the border, so that more Americans would come, and it would be like Texas, where, more Americans are there. Oh, let's be part of America and let's break away or whatever. So that's what they were afraid of at the border. So as a Mexican citizen, you can buy land anywhere. Whereas me, I'm limited. I couldn't buy a condo in Rosarita Beach or a house in Tijuana because it's too close. The first one is on the water, and then the second one is too close to the border. So you could do that. I couldn't.
Well, cool, man. That's so great. That's a lot of great history. And I mean, that makes sense. It's practical. I mean, I can see what they were thinking, and it seems to be working.
I'm waiting for the Mexican government to recognize all the work that I put into Mexico Unexplained and make me an honorary citizen of Mexico. That's what I'm waiting for. So, President Manuel Lopez Obrador, if you're listening to this podcast, please consider that.
I'm Biologist Wild Trees. I am a published researcher. I am writing my support for Robert Bitto. I think he is a cultural ambassador to Mexico. So I give my support as well for this citizenship.
Well, thank you.
Let's see. Here's another story.
I enjoy tortas, so that pretty much makes me a Spanish. El Pastor, tortas.
Who is this O person? Is this O person a mind reader? This is my next show that I'm going to do this weekend.
It's you from
I'm doing this show on Joaquin Murrieta. Nobody knows that. No one knows that. I'm doing this. It's going to drop on Sunday. I drop my shows on Sunday, but the next show I'm doing is on this guy. This is weird. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you want to give us a trailer, a sneak peek of that video? What's the taste of this character?
That is so weird, because that's a random thing right there. Okay, there's some woo going on here. Now I'm going to be a believer in all this. Well, Joaquin Murrieta is a bandit, and they believe that the Zorro character was based on him, but Zorro could also be based on an earlier character in Mexican history, and not this guy. But he was a gold miner in California when it was under Mexican control. Then the Americans took over, and then they treated him and his family, really poorly. They killed his wife. Then his brother got killed. And then he vowed to revenge against the gringos. And then so he started a gang of a bunch of people, and then exacted revenge. And then people in government called for his head. Anyone who killed him or whatever was a $5,000 reward. In the 1850s, that was a heck of a lot of money. But the whole thing about the Joaquin Murrieta story is it grew after the 1850s, after he supposedly died. It grew into this massive folk story, and we don't know about it now because that story died out like in the early 20th century. But researchers have gone back to look at the life of Joaquin Murrieta, and they're seeing that there's what did Donald Rumsfeld say one time? There's no there, or did George Bush say that? I don't know. But people are going back and they're looking at this legend and they're saying, wait a minute, there's really no evidence that this person was real. Okay. There's some documentation in California when it was a territory of the United States, right before it became a state, like 1850, I think, or 1849, where there's a Joaquin Murrieta that's listed as a horse thief. And there's really not much other documentation other than what was being written in the newspapers in Sacramento and San Francisco and, where a lot of Americans were at the time. There was a lot of, as you know, well, it happens now, fake news, right? As we say now, they called it back then yellow journalism, exaggeration. And so they wanted to sell papers. So a lot of researchers now who are looking into this story, they're seeing that there's not a lot of substance to it, that most of it could have just been a tall tale that just really got out of hand. But I'm blown away that person would mention that, because that's the podcast for this week.
Yeah.
And I haven't even told anybody about.
There's some paranormal stuff going on for sure. That is I don't know, that would cause be a coincidence, but people say, the paranormal people say there are no coincidences. There's some kind of connection going on there.
Yeah. Mind is more powerful than we think, right? Isn't that what we were talking about before?
Yeah, it's true. Real fast, I'll say, hey, Juan Pablo Chaires. Juan Pablo Chaires, I believe. I enjoy the channel. Thank you, Juan.
I'm just learning that Zorro's not real, by the way. I'm having a hard time with that. Going through some emotions.
Yeah, Robert, you're really good about speaking about Mexico. Do you have any experience doing that or something? And then O says, thank you for your contributions to his question.
Well, I want to know who this O person is and how this O person could read my mind and like that.
Oh,
that was that's random. I mean, have you heard of Joaquin Murrieta before? Probably not. I mean, he's such an obscure little thing, and that's what I'm working on this week. That's what I'm going to do on Sunday. You're going to see that. That's so weird.
Oh, now you've asked us some good questions. We have a question for you. Oh, who are you? Why did you pick this question? We want to know the connection. Please.
It's my thought projection. Oh, no, they put something. I'm projecting the O person. See, they talked about the Anasazi before, right? And I've been to Chaco Canyon. See, it's weird.
Yes.
There's a weird thing going on.
Oh, yeah, that is true. That's another good callback.
I think O might be AI.
O for the future. Always made of AI. I was going to say, as far as psychic abilities, I was going to say on this channel, I did another series. Sometimes I make a video. What I do is I get a scientific paper that's but it's on a paranormal topic, and I just read it and I go over it. So I went over a paper that had scientific evidence for psychic ability. So I read the introduction. It seems like there is scientific published research that shows that humans are psychic. Not only that, animals. I think part of it was that there's evidence that the human mind or your thoughts can alter physical reality. That's an experiment that's been done and shown. So there is something to this projection, the mind being powerful and working. Okay, well, here's an answer. I'm not sure if it's going to be satisfying, Robert, but this is what O says.
Not buying it.
Not funny.
Oh, this person knows something. Knows too much.
See this? Oh, see, that's the last letter of my last name. I'm projecting this.
Wow.
No, I don't know.
Last letter of my
It
last
was.
name.
I think. I mean, I was surprised to see that Joaquin Murrieta thing, but there are coincidences in the world. Okay, you know, I am Mr. Skeptic, so I don't know. Whatever.
Is it a coincidence that Joaquin Phoenix is scheduled to play the Zorro reboot coming up in 2024?
Let's see.
Well, is it a coincidence that he died just 3 days ago, 29 years ago?
Wait, Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah.
No.
Oh no, not Joaquin Phoenix. River
like,
Phoenix. His
like,
brother.
what in the,
His brother died.
hell?
No, his brother died. Sorry.
I'm freaking out over what was
Phoenix.
Joker about?
Yeah, sorry.
Brokeback Mountain? What?
Well, the connection's still there. It is his brother who just died recently. I mean, his anniversary just came up.
Right. Yeah.
River Phoenix, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
He died in front of a Hollywood Strip nightclub, I believe. Johnny Depp was there, I think, when it happened.
Yeah, it was some nightclub. Yeah.
Johnny Depp took over his entire role. River Phoenix could have been Willy Wonka.
So was he big for just acting, or was he into movies as well? I mean, into music? Yeah.
I don't think he was into music. He was in Stand By Me, My Own Private Idaho. What else? There were a couple of other movies.
Okay.
My Own Private Idaho, that was a good movie.
Never heard of it. I'll have to watch it now. Now we have a good movie recommendation.
It's about narcolepsy. The guy's a narcoleptic. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Bobby says, yeah, go to subscribe to his channel and you could freak us out on my next live stream. Yeah, if you want to be like Go and have us freaked out, please join Bobby's channel. Here's an inverse of a question I asked you earlier. Well, earlier we discussed what's the most probable thing to be true. We said this giant bird called a lechuza, said to look like an owl, is probably real, or if we had to guess. So now, what is the inverse? What is most likely not real? Is there any common beliefs in Mexico that you think are straight up hoaxes, or you're just like this? I just don't see it. I don't feel it. Sometimes I don't feel things. I'm like,
it's. I can't really label anything a hoax, or unless it's an outright prank that someone's playing or whatever. But anything that I've really looked at, I see that there is an element there that it could possibly be true. So there are hoaxes. Well, I guess, I don't know. I really can't commit to anything because, yeah, like I said, there could be some truth in things. Some of the religious apparitions, I'm a little, I question some of them because a lot of, whether it's a possible UFO crash or, the Virgin Mary appearing in a tortilla or something like that, sometimes there are financial reasons for people to do this because whenever something happens, there's money to be made. And, America is so capitalistic or whatever, but Mexico, they are more capitalistic than Americans are. I mean, one time, I was on a buying trip and I always hire drivers and it's a lot cheaper than renting a vehicle. And plus, they have trucks or whatever, and I can load up the back of the truck with stuff and I just go up into the rural areas. And I was in the back country of Michoacan and we heard in this town that there was a flying saucer landing spot, a burned piece of a field where the flying saucer supposedly landed. And I forget how much it was, but the guy who owned the field wanted, 20 pesos or 25 pesos just to go and see the saucer site. And then outside the landing site, there was people selling gorditas, selling snack foods and all that stuff. Whenever something like this happens, where do these balloon people come from? They come from nowhere. The ladies selling churros or little donuts or whatever. They just, and the Virgin Mary appeared on a tortilla in that house over there. Okay, well, then the balloon guy shows up to sell balloons or whatever. But I could have gone to that crash site, but my driver said, no, we're not going because you had to drive down a road to get there to pass this, this little fence area. And he said, no, we're not going there because I'm afraid of the radiation. So I was like, I'll pay for your admission. I don't care, because I was curious. I wanted to see, even if it was a hoax, I wanted to go see because it was a spectacle thing, But he didn't want to go because he was afraid of the radiation. So I missed out.
Interesting. So there's this close connection in Mexico, closer in the United States, of finance and the paranormal, making money in the paranormal. They are attached to each other.
Yeah. So, and like I said, back to the Peña de Bernal earlier in this episode, the big monolith, there were paranormal things going on there. But then when it became notorious, when people started to hear about this from around the world, then weird things started to pop up and all of this. And I think a lot of it was commercially motivated. Yeah. So, I can take you on a tour so you can see one of the little people who lives in the forest or, whatever. And so a lot of it is tied to finances, I think. Some of it, not a lot of it, but some of it, I'd say some of it.
Even with the monolith, it's interesting because I could see the scenario. I'm just supposing that, there are paranormal things going on there. There were and there still are, but there's also a mixture of the non-real things. And that's an evolution of the whole, area, paranormal spot. That's just interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's like deception on top of deception. Okay, let's see. Here's some. Let's see. So, fried bologna. Yes, fried bologna. I've never seen fried bologna. Thank you for being here, fried bologna. Please subscribe. He says John Frusciante from Red Hot Chili Peppers killed River Phoenix, gave him a drink with a lethal dose of heroin in it.
Oh, wow. And now I remember the club name, the Viper Room in Hollywood. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but that's interesting.
I just want to cover ourselves, and I will say this is alleged. John allegedly did this. Who knows? Okay.
Not to alert anyone, but we've been at this so long. Mr. Catfish is on.
Oh, Mr. Catfish is on. Oh, great.
I think it might be past my bedtime. Catfish appeared.
Yeah, it must be late there wherever you guys are. I don't know. I mean, here it's almost 8 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
1:30 p.m. California time. It just keeps going backwards. California.
I guess so. Yeah, we do keep going backwards here. It seems like.
It's like when we watch football on Saturdays. California starts at like 9:30. I'm like, come on.
Beyond Jim Skin, thank you for being here. I didn't never seen you here before, but I'm so happy to have you. Please subscribe.
Tons of newbies tonight on both these channels.
Yeah, I think Robert, put it up on his channel. I think he might have a big reach.
I'm gonna start spamming Robert with shit. Just left him. Robert, post this.
I think on my YouTube channel I have something like close to 16,000 subscribers, and then Facebook followers it's 5,000 and something. So I posted to both of those. So I hope some people came. I don't know.
I think that's. Look, I have to say right now we have the most people we've had. We have got 13 people in the room, which is a lot for this channel. We've been around like 3 months, but Mr. Catfish is here. So Mr. Catfish is from New York City. I forget which borough. I'm so sorry, Mr. Catfish. But he usually works security at night, so he's probably at work right now. I really hate those hoaxes for sure. Yeah, hoaxes. It's funny because I was gonna, we started talking about hoaxes, and I was like, yeah, people don't talk about hoaxes that much. I mean, they don't ask questions about it. Like one question could be, are there any famous hoaxes in Mexico? But then I thought before I asked that, I was like, well, what would happen if I asked that about North America? And I don't really know because hoaxes don't really get covered that much. I can't think of any famous North American hoaxes, is what I'm saying.
9/11.
There you go. All right, Alex Jones.
The frogs are gay, Joe. You're turning the frogs gay.
Oh man. Okay, so
birds
then,
aren't real.
Birds are not real. Okay, but yeah, that's a lot of people. Thank you, thank you all for. But yeah, like I said, it's also been growing as we've been going. This conversation, it's at its peak right now. So the longer the conversation goes, we're getting more people who are. We're happy to have them here. Well, I don't know. I'll say, Robert, can you do 10 more minutes? I guess, is that okay? I don't want to.
Yeah, that's fine. 10 more minutes are okay.
Perfect.
I've had a long day, but that's fine. I'm still lucid, I think. So yeah.
Of course, and it'd be 100% fine if you weren't. That's okay. Yeah, your time. I think people's time is their most precious resource they have. So whenever someone shares it with me, it's like they're sharing the most important thing with them. So I appreciate that, Robert.
Sure.
Let me bounce it to Bobby. Bobby, do you have any comments or questions?
Oh no, it's my bucket is empty today. Every time I say that, I come up with 10 more, but I won't anymore since I'm sleepy.
Okay. All right, well that sounds good. Let me see. I've heard a few stories and all over the world, but I think in Mexico of evil black-eyed people or children that will cause you to be ill if you see them. What is your understanding? How long has this been going on in Mexico, if at all, and how pervasive is it?
It's only started in the 21st century, so it's 20 years old. And people, it's always the fault of the United States, right? Anything that goes wrong in Mexico, the high price of tortillas, it's la culpa de los Estados Unidos. It's the fault of the United States. I've heard that so many times. An earthquake happened one time. Oh, it's the fault of the United States. I'm like, oh, come on. Because that's always the default. Well, the black-eyed children, they believe that it's the fault of the United States, that it's some sort of lab-created phenomenon. And it's been happening. It's happened in some parts of Mexico, but not very, it hasn't been going on for very long. And it's the same thing that has happened in the United States. You get a knock at your door, and then they speak your language, tenemos sed, podemos entrar? They ask for water, they ask to come in, you have to invite them in, It's the same thing. And yeah, so I don't know. It's identical. There's no difference in those sightings. And I don't know. I'm not up on the research of that. I did a show on that 5-6 years ago, but I haven't kept current on the research, and I don't know what some of the new theories are as to what they are, or so I don't know.
Okay, well that's really fascinating. That's a great answer. I will say on Black Lotus Live, if you go to the playlist, there's an episode on black-eyed children, and we interviewed a guy named Bobby. I mean, not Bobby, Billy. Not you, Bobby. And I became friends with Billy, and we talked some more. But anyway, he told us about his black-eyed children. He actually saw them twice. This was in, I think, southern United States. So one time he was just driving, he saw them on the side of the street, and he refused to stop. But this other time, I think it was in the 90s, yeah, he said there was just two black-eyed children that went to his front door. He saw them, they were there, they were knocking on the door. He got scared, he wouldn't let him in, and he kept scaring him. They were like knocking on the windows and banging and just kept asking to come in. And then finally they left. And to me, like, when I first heard about black-eyed children or people, I was like, that sounds like a creepypasta. That sounds like a Slender Man, a modern, human-made, popular story that is sometimes confused for reality. But then, I heard someone's firsthand experience of one, and I'll say right now, I do believe Billy was genuine. And I was like, okay, that changes my mind completely. There's a lot more support now. But it's interesting that it's only a recent thing. Some other things we talked about, this could be wrong, but I was just guessing. I was like, well, it could be an organism that feeds on negative emotions, or maybe it feeds on strong emotions. So that's why it wants to scare you. If that were true, then it would equally get energy from you if it made you laugh hysterically. But I think it's easier to make someone scared than it is to make them laugh. I think you need more talent to make someone laugh, probably. You could just get a gun and scare somebody, It's very simple.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then we talked about how if that was true, then these would be animals that are predators of humans. And I said that, well, real life predators like a lion, they're heavily outnumbered by the prey. So there's a very few amount of lions. There's a whole lot of zebras. And so I was like, that could explain why they're so rare. You don't hear them about at the time. But then the thing about how it's recent, like did it just come here from another dimension in the last 20 years or something? It could be an invasive species. The idea exists on the planet right now of an invasive species, which is like you take a tropical fish from China and you accidentally release it in Florida, and this animal just grows exponentially and it changes the ecosystem and it causes billions of dollars in destruction. That's an invasive species from another physical spot on the planet. But if there are different dimensions or like portals and stuff, you could have an invasive species from another dimension come into our dimension. That would be interesting. But yeah, the black-eyed children, yeah, they sound like animals. Oh, the other thing I thought about is this. Okay, it's the same thing that traditional vampires have, how they ask to be let in, right? So the observation has been made, like Billy said, these kids, he's like, I'm pretty sure they could have gotten in if they wanted to, like they could have broken a window or something. And other people have said, yeah, well, what's stopping it? And I suggested, or maybe I think Billy suggested this actually, and I kind of went with it, that if they are energy vampires, then they really don't want to go in your house. Really, they just want to get you scared, and it's perhaps better to scare you from the outside because if you get inside, I'm thinking you'll either make them faint, or maybe they'll try to punch you or fight you. So I was just thinking that maybe they don't want to go inside at all. That's just a trick to get you scared.
Yeah, that could be. That's a good theory. Or can I not use that word?
Theory. Okay, well, yeah, you should say a hypothesis in this case. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You could say a theory if me myself or other people had taken this idea and shown experimentally that it had happened. If you had enough of that, then you could say theory. But as of right now, it's a hypothesis. But yeah, it could be totally wrong. I was just kind of thinking out loud because I do love predators. I also really like it's something to do with the paranormal, but I really like scammers, human scammers, like financial scammers, all kinds of scammers, because to me, that's like the closest to a parasite in human culture. Because one of my mentors in college was a really big parasitologist. So, that really rubbed off on me. And so I learned that being a parasite is one of the most common forms of life on the planet. There's a lot of organisms that choose this lifestyle of parasitism. What's also interesting is that there's some animals. I could define what a parasite is, because there's this other thing called a parasitoid. Okay, so if you think of Aliens, the Alien franchise, Alien 2 with James Cameron. Okay, that organism is actually what's called a parasitoid. So what a parasitoid does is it does inhabit your body, but the end result is that it kills you. Like that's part of its life cycle, is it kills you. That is not true for a parasite, okay? A parasite can kill you, make you too ill, but that's not what it's trying to do. It does not benefit from your death. So yeah, that's what a parasite is. And to me, like I said, scammers are kind of being parasites, basically. They're cheating. That's one way I look at it. Like parasites, they're like, look, I'm not going to get my own food. I'm just going to steal your resources, like your blood. I'm just going to steal everything you have directly. But yeah, what is what are some famous scams in Mexico, I guess, that maybe tourists should be aware of? Speaking about scammers.
God, there could be a lot. Money changing on the street. Well, I don't know. There could be a lot of scams. I mean, taxi drivers taking you to the wrong place and then trying to extort money out of you to get you to the right place. Okay. That's a scam that a lot of people don't know about. I don't know. That could be a whole show.
Well, we'll just concentrate on that one. How would you avoid the taxi scam then? What's the best advice to avoid that one?
I don't know. Once you get into a cab in an unfamiliar place, you're at the mercy of the taxi driver, right? I mean, okay. When I worked in Mexico City, I got kicked out of a cab because I was traveling from the hotel where we were staying to the corporate headquarters, and one of the passengers, who is one of my coworkers, she was from Spain, but she was part of the American cohort that went down there. And she was arguing with the taxi driver, saying that she was accusing him of doing this scam. And she was saying, no conoce la ruta, in her Spanish accent with the theta. And then she was screaming at him, no conoce la ruta. You don't know the way. You don't know the way. And then the taxi driver stopped and said, everybody get out, because he was going the right way. He was just taking a little bit of detour because of the traffic. But he said to the Spanish girl specifically, we kicked you people out of this country in 1821. Now get out of my cab. And I'm like, thanks a lot, Silvana. We got to get another cab and we're going to be late to work now. But whatever. Yeah, so there's that scam.
Spaniards. Yeah. Conquistadors.
But you know what? That's interesting, because when she was in that office, you could hear her from all the way across the room. And Spaniards in Mexico have the reputation of being loud and bold and everything. And then I had heard about that, way back, like years and years ago. And then I said, well, I guess that's why they conquered half the world, because of that whole attitude. They're all loud and just, they feel entitled and they're loud. Well, that's why they conquered the Aztecs and the Inca and all of these other people, because they just went, just went headlong into it with this whole loud, aggressive attitude. And it was funny because that's the reputation of Spaniards in Mexico. You go to the rural parts of Mexico and people will talk like this. It's a very quiet. They talk with then you get a Spaniard. But yeah, I'll never forget that. We kicked you people out of here in 1821. So get out of my cab. Oh, wow. But yeah, beware of the taxi scams. But I don't know. There's no way. I mean, I've never been scammed from a taxi driver, but you can negotiate the fare before you get in too. So whatever. But anyway, I don't know. We can talk all night about Mexico and into tomorrow morning.
That's true. Well, that was a great joke to end on. If you just want to say one or two sentences on this, last minute edition, Donovan Mesa is here. Thank you. Never seen you before either. Please subscribe. So happy to have you. Just thoughts on dinosaurs in Mexico, Robert.
Well, oh gosh. I mean, I could go on with this too. There's a dinosaur museum. Well, the Waldemar Julesrud Museum in Acámbaro, Mexico, in central Mexico. There's a museum of figurines of dinosaurs that they unearthed. And the dinosaurs are with people. There are people riding Triceratops and, with having leashes with dinosaur. I mean, it's really bizarre. And they supposedly were unearthed locally. And when in the height of this, when they were finding more and more of these dinosaur figurines that supposedly only dated back 2,000 years, but they had people with dinosaurs, the National Institute of the Mexican National Institute of Anthropology and History put a kibosh on all. They slammed. They didn't give any more permits for digging. They ceased all of the digging of these uncovering of these figurines. And there's a museum there that I've been to that has thousands of these figurines of these dinosaurs with people.
Okay, and now I know.
I'm looking at them right now. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, but I have to say I will step in with my opinions on this.
Okay.
Waldemar Julesrud, the German guy who was there in the 1940s, who was a rancher, was paying people for these. Okay, we're talking about monetary incentives. Was paying people for these supposedly unearthed figurines. Okay.
Okay. So
I went to the museum and I looked at all of them. And what do I do for a living? I peddle arts and crafts. I've been doing this for 23 years. I can tell, how things are made, how long it takes to make things. I am an expert in arts and crafts, especially from Mexico. And people have gone down there and said, oh, it would be impossible for all this to be faked, and they blah, 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 say that these are real because there's so many of them, it would be impossible to fake. It's not true. It would be very easy to fake all of these. And in fact, I think most of them, if not all of them, are fake. And if you want to talk about hoaxes, I'm inclined to believe that this is.
Okay.
It's impossible. The author of the Perry Mason novels went down there, Mr. Sleuth, and proclaimed that there was no way that these figurines could have been made. Well, I can go down there as an expert in arts and crafts and know that these figurines, all of them could be done by 6 families working in workshops over the course of like 3 years. I know when I order things, I've visited workshops. I know how they produce things. And a lot of these figurines are really crude. Some of these figurines could be knocked out in 15 minutes. And then what they do, and what they did, I think, with a lot of these figurines is they buried them for a few years to age them, like they do to some of the little stone figurines that you can buy at the pyramids or any of these tourist sites where you have some guy come up to you and say, hey, these are authentic. These are authentic pre-Columbian. These are 1,500 years old. But they're modern stone carvings or clay carvings that they've buried for years. And then they unearth them and they look like they're really old.
Yeah.
So I know the tricks and I know how long it takes to make things. And I wasn't impressed by this museum. I mean, I thought it could all be faked within a period of 5 years. Wow. It's totally doable. Everything that's there.
Wow, what a roller coaster of a story! But that's great. Thank you so much for that contribution. That's awesome. So I will say that once again, I think one of the best ways to support Robert is to go to Amazon, type in Robert Bitto, get his books, his coloring books. But Robert, if you suggest, what would you like people to do if they want to find out more about you?
Go to my YouTube channel. I have the weekly show that drops every Sunday, and I never tell what I'm going to do, but I was preempted by O. So this week is Joaquin Murrieta, the Bandito. But you can go to YouTube or you can go to MexicoUnexplained.com. If you go to MexicoUnexplained.com, you can read free transcripts of past shows. So there's no paywall or anything. You can read every single episode. And then if you want to support me, you can buy a book. And through my website, you can get autograph copies. If you want to send like a book as a gift, I can personalize and autograph the copy for you. It's no problem. But the best ways to connect with me, and then I have the Facebook page too. So I'd say Facebook. I have Instagram also at Mexico Unexplained. So any of the social media, I'm on Twitter too. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, my own website, and YouTube. There. Did I miss anything? I don't have TikTok, but I think I have pretty much
your OnlyFans.
So, yeah. So, who said that? I didn't hear who said that. That was no. So anyone, I would say, go the wealth of the stuff because of the comment section. I would say is YouTube. So go there, be a part of the conversation or whatever. And if you've had paranormal experiences, if you've seen the Luchus, if you've seen an Alush or Chaneque in the forest, if you've had a Bigfoot encounter while you were in Mexico, I want to hear about it. So yeah, jump on and make a comment. And I answer all my comments too. There's a lot of them every day. I get a ton of comments, but I read every single one.
Okay. That being said, Adam, why don't you post this question on Robert's newest video that's going to be this Sunday, and he answers every question, so he will answer your question.
For that one, he can go to. I did a show about Kaheme. So if he wants to know more about that, I mean, it looks like he knows something about Kaheme. He was an indigenous leader of the Yaquis who set up an independent republic in Mexico and was almost successful. But yeah, I did a show on him a long time ago, but that's interesting that he brings that up.
So the question was, remember the Yaquis in the Cojeme area of Obregón?
Right. So yeah, the Yaquis, it's a group of Native Americans, and some of them are in Arizona. In fact, there's a reservation, I think, or maybe even two in Arizona. So Obregón is the area in Sonora that a lot of them are from. And Cajeme, it's a town that's named after this leader that I just talked about. And I did an episode on the leader. So
perfect. All right. We'll follow up on there, Adam. That's a great place to go. So the channel is called Mexico Unexplained. So you can subscribe and search for that channel. But thank you for all the questions. Bobby, thank you for being here. Bobby, you can go to bobbydizzle.com to check out his links. But also on YouTube, he's got a channel, and we constantly are collaborating. But that being said, Robert, thank you so much for all your time you gave us today.
Thank you.
Robert, it's been amazing.
So stimulating, amazing conversation. I'm going to listen to it many times over to process it all fully. So yeah, thank you, Robert, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Until next time, everybody. Robert, thank you.
All right, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Of course, please subscribe if this is your first time. We got a lot of people saying thank you, guys. And somebody, Fried Bologna, says he loved your Vatan video. Vatan? Votan?
Oh, Votan. Yeah, that's a possible Viking who visited the Maya area 1,000 years ago.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome! And you made a video on that, so people
see this can keep going.
Check out that video. I have a lot of recommendations now. All right, guys. Good night. I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Thanks.